What's up, y'all? I'm gonna do something a little bit different. And I don't know yet what I'm going to play, but I'm gonna play just like a good little amount of something on Frank the guitar. Normally, I do some guitar playing for the intro, but I'm gonna kind of sit here for a good amount of time, however long that ends up being, and just kind of play with Frank. And then we'll get into this discussion. So, yeah, freestyle, here we go. Hold on, let's get a good little, let's get something good going. That's what we're gonna do. That's the first time that I've played for more than just a few seconds for an intro to In the Image Clothing Company podcast, which is where we are now. My heart's full. My heart's full, and it's not because something that somebody necessarily did to me, but it's just because of something that I experienced, and this is what we're going to get into. This is episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and it's titled, It's Not About Them. So let's get into this. Hold on, if you would. I'm gonna play some more. We're gonna come back up, but we're gonna go all the way up to the 5th fret. Frank the guitar's in tune, which is a rarity. I just tuned him. If he's slightly out of tune, then hey. But also, I put the little shim back underneath the nut, which is one of the reasons that he is called Frank the guitar, short for Frankenstein. And so he feels better to play. So, I mean, we could go 8-9 minutes plus in the intro of me just picking around through stuff, and then we're still going to get into this. Like I said, this is a very special episode to me because of the way that I have been caused to feel, I guess, and we'll get into discussing that, but I'll just kind of play around for a bit. That's what we'll do. That's what we'll do, and I feel content with that. I feel good about that being placed in here. It's not about them. I will get into this. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company as a whole, but there are 3 sides to us. But here on the podcast, we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the truth of all things. I say this phrase, and I say it very commonly, at least up until now I have, in many past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. don't believe me. And when I say that, what I mean is truth manifests itself to you. And so I'm speaking things here, and I like to say, because it's really the case, and we have every intention for this to be what we do, we speak undisputed, unchanging, eternal, universal truths that apply to everybody across the entirety of our earth from beginning to end because of the reason that I said. We discussed the gospel of Jesus Christ. And with that, you don't have to believe it, but it's just something that is what it is. And that is going to be something really big within what I'm talking about in this episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled It's Not About Them. Let me be very clear. I'm understandably, if you're listening, very calm and content right now. But if part of the way through this I start getting ramping up and I start doing percussion out of my mouth, beatboxing and maybe wordplay out of nowhere, and I start sounding like I'm about to spit a rap battle at this phone I'm speaking into, right? Then cool. I'm just as content in those moments. It's just I got a lot of sides to me. So it's not like the way I'm feeling now is only how you're going to be receiving what you need to, as long as I stay this way or whatever. No. But a lot of things just really teach you stuff that you already knew. So we'll get into that. But in the Image Clothing Company as a whole, we address the human body on all three sides of our company, but we have another third, which is what I title the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. And what we really do physically, besides spread the gospel of Jesus Christ through all that we do, is we keyword allow the body to work, the body of the human being that we are, the body that we've been given. It's a gift by our God, designed by and in and through Jesus Christ himself. That's why the first three words in our name are what they are, in the image, right? All five of them together, in the Image Clothing Company. We're designed in the image of Jesus Christ, by him, through him. And that in itself is going to go along really well with this title. It's Not About Them, episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. But on the main side of the company, we address the human body, coming at it through the skeletal system. The fat content changes at different times in our lives. The muscle mass changes at different times in our lives, right? But the skeletal system's our foundational frame. There's no need for musculature of the body if there's no skeletal system for it to operate and move, because that's how muscles work, is they connect to the skeletal system and just move it. That's their function. The prerequisite is to have a skeletal system. So we address the human body, sitting, standing, walking, eating, staying hydrated, what hydration really means, all the things that we do as a human being, sleeping, doing these things naturally, meaning the only way that our God designed our bodies to actually work. That's what we discuss, and we show how to just let it happen. Now, clothing is the only thing placed physically on us, and so it's altering our bodies to a higher degree than anything else we could do in our lives to get into some kind of patterning or some kind of imbalance, because the entirety of the time we have clothing on us, if it has any kind of imbalance in it at all, it's directly going to the body and its inner workings and creating scar tissue, creating patternings, and across the globe, people are in the same patternings. This persistent pain you're feeling, not knowing what's going on, it's because of your clothing. That's why I say don't believe me, because that seems a little bit like, what? If you've never heard of that kind of approach of things. But when we see it as it is, I like to say it's as obvious as it is once we see it. No opinions that we have here other than we're sinful by nature, as we all are equal human beings. So we mess up as and when we do. Keyword being when. It's not just an if, it's I'm going to. So look out for it, right? And don't call me out on it, right? So yeah, leave me alone, right? I say these things and I mean it. But here's the thing. We also have one other third of our company, which is In the Image Clothing Company music. And like I was mentioning, I don't normally play that much guitar as much as I did within this intro. When it comes to In the Image Clothing Company podcast, we have a whole third of our company that is dedicated to music and approaching it the way that we do, allowing our bodies to do that thing, whatever kind of thing we're doing. Even if we don't touch on the instrument that you're playing when it comes to In the Image Clothing Company music, we still address how to just come at things with like a neutral wrist, for example, is something we talk about all the time. That natural open palm that correlates directly with the arches in our feet that are also open, right? I mean, The hands are going to be altered if your feet are, so it stems at the feet, the body's foundation traveling up. The body only works as a whole. I also make music on In The Image Clothing Company music. It's not, at least as of this date, today's date, which is actually the second podcast episode I filmed today. I did episode 68 today as well, which is the one that is titled What It Is. If it comes to me, it comes to me. If not, you can go find it by the number. But, and the date, which is today's. As of now, it's been more just me playing music than discussions and things when it comes to In The Image Clothing Company music. But I definitely have gone into depth of what it takes with a guitar to allow the body to approach playing that thing without being altered. So we do these kind of things, and we talk about the body as it is. I've got a very, 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 very deep understanding of the natural workings of the human being. We're all the same. You can be taller, shorter, skinnier, fatter than the other person or the other man, woman that's around you. But again, it's about the skeletal frame. It really is, because the body's about a natural position. And then there it can do everything from, because each joint within the body is just two bones connecting, and they just have the functionality and range of motion that they do, and they will never do anything else. So, because of those reasons, we understand where clothing needs to sit on every human being. If you're a man, if you are a woman, if you are skinny, if you are what you would consider a little bit whatever, right? Now I've said it that way. It sounds a little weird, but what I normally just say is man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the globe, any time period, because that's the case, right? I mean, our bodies look how they do, and that changes, as in the things on top of our frame. But to allow that skeletal frame and all its joints to just do what it's going to do, the pants we wear need to be entirely above our hips, all the way up there, and slightly higher in the front than in the rear. That way they're not restricting the hips, they're not anywhere closing off the whole pelvis structure, and the angle higher in the front, just slightly, than in the rear, will be what's going to allow our core muscles, or what we think of as abdominal muscles, like the 6-pack, the 8-pack, to just stay constantly activated as they would if they were never altered. And that has to happen because that's the center of our body from that point up and from that point down, allowing the rest of it to do its job, like the core of an apple, right? As I say, you core an apple, the apple will wither away. The human being's core is just like that core of the apple. It feeds the body in a sense. It supports the body and it stabilizes the body. It allows everything else to be able to have its function because its central part is working, okay? Always, naturally. That's how it would be. So that's nuts. It is nuts because that's another big thing is I understand that people around me look at me a certain way, and I don't have any question as to why. I don't have a problem with it because I get it. I stand so different. I sit so different than just about everybody else that I'm around. And it's because I'm extremely intentional and I do the things that I talk about here within this company that I have personally founded, In The Image Clothing Company. There's an episode of In The Image Clothing Company podcast titled Preaching What I Practice. Something similar to that is the title. I went on the back end of practicing what you preach because I'm just talking about the things that I personally do. And so my life looks how I'm discussing within episodes of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. And so I'm eating super slow when I'm around people. I'm standing and I don't have to be shifting my weight. I don't have to be doing any kind of thing besides just standing with my feet pointed in. Stand kind of like this. People call it pigeon-toed, but really it's just the way that the arch actually grips if it's working natural. So I get it, right? When I'm sitting, I have my hands kind of like this right here. If you can see, if you're watching in visual, my hands are like this and just kind of like between my like inner thighs like this, because sitting in a chair is so unnatural and people know it because they feel it. But it's also like, well, everybody else does it, so how could I have some kind of say over it, thinking that I don't want to sit in this chair because that's just what it seems like people are doing, you know? But that's why I film these episodes of the podcast on the ground. I sit on the floor. In my house, if I'm doing anything where I'm sitting down, I'm on the floor. I don't sit in chair heights. At public places, right, especially church, we have the pews, and I do sit in the church pews. But like I said, I sit very, very centered and very, very intentional because I keep my body activated as a whole, the only way it's ever going to work. And sitting in chairs cuts off the whole hamstring muscle, the rear of the upper leg, that big muscle that spans that. When you're sitting in a chair, that's where your discomfort is coming from, is because you're cutting that muscle in half with what you're sitting on. The body's not designed to do that. And so I'll give a little context. That's why a lot of times tall people are strong. And I think it's common for people to see a little bit of a separation between the functionality of people when they're a little bit taller than average compared to shorter people. Because when they're sitting down, and I'm kind of like, right around that height, but even people that are taller than me, I'm 6'2" for reference. I'm just saying, because it's very common for chair heights to be a pretty similar height nowadays, but it's just something that we've come up with and decided, which is very unnatural. We've talked about it, and we will under In the Image Clothing Company. But the taller you are, it's kind of like the lower you're sitting, right? A short person sitting on the same height thing compared to the taller person sitting on that, it's like the taller person's actually sitting on a shorter chair in like comparison, right? And so their hamstrings have less pressure put on them, is what I'm saying. So that's a big thing, because a lot of people can't even touch their feet to the ground. I've talked about this with people, right? They're sitting in a chair and their feet can't even touch the ground. And so now there's all that weight just directly on their hamstring, just cutting it in half, entirely deactivating that muscle. And it just changes the whole functionality of your body. And we get into it in depth and we talk about it. I actually made a video for the main side of In the Image Clothing Company titled, well, it's within our Truth Behind series, titled The Truth Behind Sitting. And I did go into it in that. So we talk about that a lot. Anyway, the tops that we wear, we went over pants just now. Well, before I talked about sitting and the other things that I did. Well, I guess here's the thing is, I understand that people see that I work different than most others when I'm in public. Just meaning when I'm home alone, nobody's there to see me. But yeah, that's going to go along with what I'm saying here, and I'll get into it. The tops that we wear, the shirts need to be to where the seams on top of them are evenly behind, as you can see here. Again, if you're watching visual, right here, I'm putting my fingers on these little bones that are on the top of my shoulders. And the seams need to be evenly behind those little bones, because those are the other end of our collarbone. And that's how we're going to allow our shoulders to be in their neutral position, which is behind the body where they'd naturally sit, where that upper trapezius muscle will just track in line, the only place that it can actually do anything, because muscles just have insertions at their endpoints that pull together. And then ideally just right at the very edges, for the edge seams of our shoulders, is where the operation of the shoulder capsule is. And so the seam should ideally be just right on that movement. Now, In the Image Clothing Company has two additional things that we talk about, calling them prerequisites to just further aid in no restriction to the human being. The first one being shoe laces. When we're introducing ropes to the body, we can have the potential to very much twist and alter the body's function. The body has a lot of rotations, internal versus external. Really, not that they're like battling, but just they're opposites. And opposing rotations, right? Internals toward the center of us, which we do have, right? There's a spine, there's the sternum, there's the nose. There's no opinion to have or not. We have to stay centered on an earth with gravity. Otherwise, the body's just having to do so much extra work just to try to work. And so that's why I mentioned when I sit so very centered in chairs, because it's uncomfortable for anybody. So if you're wondering why it seems like you can't quite sit in a chair comfortably, because of the reasons I was discussing, and we get into it in depth here at In the Image Clothing Company. So the first prerequisite is our shoelacing technique. Find that where you find us. In the Image Clothing Company shoelacing technique. It's just the only way you're going to weave a rope across the top of your feet that is shaped the way that your feet are. And with that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside, because we just established there is a center line. So now you have an even foundation traveling up. Secondly, we remove all tags from clothing. Anywhere a tag is placed within clothing is just causing an unnatural gap. It's altering the body's only workings, and there's your physical pain. Skeletal system has been pushed out of its only connecting position in each joint that's getting any kind of alteration happening by that tag, but even stuff very far away from the tag, because if something within the body isn't working correct, something else and many things have to compensate just to keep the body working, because everything is one within our being. Anywhere part of you goes, the rest of you goes as well. So that does include within the shoes as well as anywhere else, pants, shirts, wise, undergarments, all things that we do place on us. Slippery synthetic materials are also what tags are made out of almost always nowadays. Materials that didn't even exist decades past this point back, and then never before then. So the muscles can't activate against something that's slippery and unpredictable. They'll feel like there's potential danger, right? It's kind of like walking on ice. Your feet are doing so much extra stabilization. That's what your left side is doing with the tags placed in it. That's what your upper and mid trapezius muscles in the rear of your upper back are doing when there's a tag in the rear of your shirt collar. That's what the glutes that are inserting into kind of where your base of your spine is at, like your tailbone area, and your lower back muscles, because there's almost always at this time period tags placed in the rear of pants right there. So that's just what it is doing. That's what's happening, right? So cool. All right, sweet. Let's get into this episode. Like I said, if I start ramping up, I know I'm like really like mellow right now, and it's just authentic how I'm feeling right now, but I'm just as authentic as long as I'm being authentic. But in times when I'm like yelling out of passion of what I'm saying, and I sound more like a preacher up on a stand than like some kid sitting here like almost whispering in your ear. Both sides are me. I just, I feel what I feel and it comes out. So I don't want you to think that I'm trying to like make something be something, because I got so many different levels of volume, right? And you got your decibel measuring stick out. Although it's probably not a stick that you're measuring sound waves with, but right. Yeah, I just kind of forewarning, I guess, if this like sounds like an entirely different person's talking in about 20 minutes or whatever it gets to, it's still me. So stick around. You got a problem with what we're saying, stick around, right? You've got a problem within the Image Clothing Company, stick around. You wonder why I'm all over the place all the time? Well, me too. So, all right, check this out. This is episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled It's Not About Them. But what I will say is a lot of times people have a big old impact on us and in us and through us without even trying to be something to us. But there's things that happen just by them being them. But that's what I want to focus on, and I want to give a really good concrete like foundation of what this is before we get into it, because don't put the focus on them. It's not about them. People that turn me into this kind of calm, how I've entered this podcast episode with, like I was saying, who knows who's going to be exiting this as far as which side of Evan's strong. But I will say that level of calm that like is almost like, I don't want to say wearing off, but like, you know what I mean? I'm getting into podcast mode. And what I was coming into this with was, yeah, I mean, I was around somebody, but it's not about them, and that's what I'm making it very clear about. It's not, because this is what happens. If people get around somebody that makes them feel so blissful and calm and loved and just like accepted, like you could say anything and you could mess up, you could all of a sudden laugh and have no nose come out of your milk, right? Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. You're in front of them and you say something like that, but you were trying to be funny and impress them with how comedic you are, and all of a sudden you messed up on your joke, but they're still just like, oh, you're okay, like it's fine. And they're just so chill, so sweet, so Christ-like, because it's not about them. But this person has allowed themselves to be connected with our living God. In a modern 2025, or going forth, it will only get harder. Prepare, right? Prophecies, read the scriptures. Don't let me tell you what to do, but the Holy Bible, the Book of Mormon, these passages of scriptures, these historical records that are prophesying of things that have happened, are happening now, and will only continue to just do what they say. The prophecies are coming true now. I can't be disputing something. You can't be disputing something if we're looking outside, and it's crazy. It is what it is. But there's a lot of people, man, and I try my best. Right? A lot of people are very in touch with the Spirit of our living God. And when you're around these people, it's not really even them speaking to you, but it's the Spirit speaking through them. And that's really what I'm saying when I say don't believe me, Evan Strong, but take the truth within what I say And ideally, I'm only speaking truth, but I don't have any say over being sinful by nature, right? Adam fell that men might be, and men are that they might have joy. Scripture within the Book of Mormon, meaning the first man sinned, he kind of laid the, paved the road for the rest of us to follow in his footsteps. But really, it wasn't just him doing something. Our God placed that as the plan to be. But here's the thing. Sometimes you're around some people and you feel like, man, like you need this person. But it's not about them. But what they're doing, people that make you feel so calm and content and accepted and loved, and like you could make 1,000 mistakes and they wouldn't care because they're just there. It's not about them. But they just know that they're allowed to make 1,000 mistakes and there's a God who doesn't care. As long as they're trying all they can to be righteous, right? I'm righteous enough to know that I mess up, right? I'm righteous enough that I can't do it on my own even when I try to, right? It's about Christ. And he shines through us when we're willing to be used as a vessel. Check that out. That was actually the last episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 68. Used as a vessel is what I talked about. The title is just As a Vessel. I filmed that today when I got back from church. And then I went over and we had what we call a devotional, where we had some people speak and we just gathered around, in the chapel of the church. And that's where I was just around. See, because that's the thing, is it's not about who it was. It doesn't matter if it was a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if I ever see him or her again, if it was this event or one of these times I've had in the past with somebody else, or down the road somebody else, or what. That's exactly what I want to lay this out with before I get any deeper. Like I was saying, we don't put the focus on the person. That's why it's titled this way. Episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. It's not about them, but it's about the Spirit of God. And he works through us if we're willing to be his. Meaning, if we're willing to be so weird and different, just because in those cases that's naturally how we'd be, even though the world's looking at us crazy, he's willing to work through us to the level that we're willing to be used. Shout out to In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 68, as a vessel. And so, I've made some mistakes in the past, assigning the feeling that I got from a human being to that person, when really it was just because they were unapologetically and absolutely authentically a disciple of Jesus Christ in the ways that they were. And they're still messing up. They're still sinning left and right, no matter how hard they're trying. Because, what's a sin, right? How nitpicky do you want to get on a sin? We're all doing it. But it's, where's your intention? Where's your attention? What do you place your importance on over all else? Because if I'm just being real right now, whether if I were to say this I'd get potentially praised, or whether I'd get potentially burned at the stake, depending on who hears this or what they think is good or bad or right or wrong, just saying this as it is. Evan Strong, me, the one speaking, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, which is what this podcast is, In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. I care about nothing greater than Jesus Christ. I'm not saying that for any kind of thing, okay? I don't care, because that's the thing. I say that in a certain community and people potentially want to get all over me thinking like, oh, he's so righteous. I say that in a different community and all of a sudden I'm tarred and feathered, right? I'm tied to a stake and stoned, as in they throw rocks at you. right? I'm tossed overboard from a ship. I'm thrown in a dungeon with some lions, right? Or a furnace. I'm used as a slave and a workhorse, right? I think we forget that sometimes, that it's not just about living in a society that, well, I have grown up, right? Utah, the United States of America. In this state, it's mostly Christians, disciples of Jesus Christ, people who believe, know, hope for, follow, whatever words you want to say. The point is, have their whole focus being on Jesus Christ. And to whatever degree that is, however quote unquote good they seem at it or what. The point being, in this culture, if I say what I said, just speaking as it is, as we do here, I care about nothing more than Jesus Christ. Around here, it might sound like, oh, he's trying to be this good kid. But I say that in a certain part of the world or a certain time period, and all of a sudden I gotta be watching my 6 o'clock when I'm walking through the streets because somebody wants to take me out. And we gotta realize that. Because I think a lot of times the things that I'm saying on this podcast, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, I'm approaching them as if I'm talking to people that I've been surrounded with most of my life. Or I'm approaching them as if I'm only talking to a Christian community on the receiving end of this podcast. Right? People listening to In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and you got people from all sorts of anywhere. It's 2025, and this is just placed on the public internet. Anybody who has access to that can hear this. And going forth, I mean, I can't really say for sure, but it'll probably be pretty similar. Right? Again, maybe not. But I think it's a really good thing to see that maybe I could be saying this and having people on the receiving end thinking that they want to, take me out. And I got no fear in saying this because maybe that's how I go one of these days, right? 4 years down the road. Hear this. I'm not worried about this, and I am fully aware this could be the case. 4 years down the road, 8 years down the road, 20 years from this point forward, wherever we're at, somebody might be looking at this and have watched all my podcasts and think that I'm this evil person who's worshiping something or somebody that they don't think is the right thing to do. And maybe they've been plotting and scheming to kill me. People avoid talking this way, but this stuff just happens. If that's how I go, that's how I go. So I want to make it as real as it is, because it's not about them. Meaning if somebody's talking to you about me, they could be saying that. It's not about Evan Strong, they say, right? Maybe I've got some episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast that really have uplifted you. I say some pretty, funny things sometimes. I say some really impactful stuff because I'm talking about scripture verses and biblical stories, Book of Mormon stories. I've got a really deep understanding on certain things in life, and I share it here. But it's not about me. That's why I'm so very clear to say don't believe me. Because no matter who this person was tonight, or if it's anybody at all, the feeling that I experienced wasn't about them. But it was about Jesus Christ being allowed by this person to work through them. And so it was his spirit that I was feeling, not theirs. And so, like I was saying about making some mistakes in the past and putting importance or focus and attention on a human being because they were filled with the light and love of Jesus Christ, I thought it was about them. So I'd get, a little bit caught up in that person being so great. But here's the thing is, our God's the same. He's the same yesterday, he's today, he's tomorrow, he's your grandkids. As I've been, I said that in the episode or two back of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I was talking like that, right? Wherever you're at whatever time period, our God's the same. Wherever you're at on any part of our earth, our God's the same. And human beings are just what we are. And what makes somebody so memorable and impactful and loving, understanding, easy to be around, chill, accepting, is because our God is being allowed by that person to work through them. He's not going to force us. Wow. He's the Almighty. But that's not really how he said that he's going to do things, is forcibly work through us to get something good done. He's going to use who's willing to be used because he doesn't need us to do anything, despite popular belief. That's the truth. He's Almighty. He can do anything at the drop of a hat or at the picking up of a hat without even reaching down to grab it. I'm just saying, right? There's no limits. We serve a God who's perfect. But if people are willing to be used by him and allowing themselves to be a vessel, episode 68, right, of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, as a vessel, then we can really, really feel like we're special by just being around somebody else. Because it's a privilege to be able to feel our God so tangibly by seeing him, his spirit, his love in and through a human being. Because it's very rare for us to see him personally in this life that we live. But we can see him in anything. And I can say it like that. I can say it like that. Okay, we can really get into this in all sorts of ways. And I just don't know, dude. The reason I say I don't know is because this is something I could talk about and talk about and talk about. All right. It makes me uncomfortable. Because Okay, I've said... I didn't expect it to be like this. You know, I'm only doing this because I feel prompted to. I'm gonna grab Frank. We're gonna throw the capo on the 3rd fret. I don't know what I'm gonna play. I don't know if he's still quite in tune. But I feel like I'm just supposed to hold this guitar for a second, so... Dude, I don't even know, brother. That's what I'm saying. I was going into this and I was like, yeah, dude, this is a little bit different than how I normally am, so... I don't know, dude. I guess we're just playing guitar for a bit, brother. My nails are long, dude. I don't know, brother. I mean, it's just how it is, dude. Is you never know what to expect when you're really open. I mean it. Like, this is just really how it is, you know? But that's what I mean is it's not about them. It's not about you like the words that this person's speaking, and I mean, it's not about them, dude. It's how are they allowed to be that way? You know, how are they so content? I was thinking earlier, man, I was watching this TV show that I do, and these people in this show live really remote lives as far as they're just like nowhere near anybody else, living alone and living off the land, you know. It got me thinking, yeah, we really never need to be lonely. A lot of times in these modern societies that we live in these cities and towns that we have, a lot of people feel really lonely because there's this focus on being around people that gets like talked about as if that's the norm. Like, if you're not around people X amount of time, then you're missing out. And then you see these people who live out there hundreds of miles away from anybody else, and their lives are very, very, very full, enriched. They're filled with the Spirit of our God because they're living on the earth that He gave them. And a lot of times we really get caught up on people, man, and you know, this has been something we've talked about quite a bit through past episodes of the Image Clothing Company podcast, but, you know, just not putting the importance of another equal to you human being higher than your almighty creator. Because it's not about them. Yeah, sure, they can act really great in a real way. They can be very kind and loving and understanding in a real way, but only because they're emulating God. I remember going home from places, kind of feeling the way that I entered this podcast with, you know. I mean, I'm still feeling that way. Just meaning it's a distinct level of comfort and calm and peace that you sometimes feel like is only a conditional thing. And I remember kind of associating it with the people that I was around and thinking, you know, after walking away from somebody who made me feel that way, you know, how am I going to make sure that I get to be around that person again? And if I don't, then how am I ever going to do anything that matters because that feeling was too good to never have again? Well, don't worry about it then. And figure out how they were allowed to make you feel that way. Because you personally can make other people feel that way as well. And I know that I do that. Is that a little bit too much to say? A little bit too focused on myself? A little bit too egoic or what? I don't care. I'm going to say it. I got this level of contentment that other people can feel, but it only comes when I'm actually doing all that I can within all the mistakes that I'm still making to really be following Jesus Christ. And it's not just a one and done, you know, because there's certain times in my life where I made people feel nice and content. There's other times in my life where it wasn't at quite a high level as those times that we just said. Because I wasn't doing all that I could in certain times, and other times I really was striving to. And I'm going to say, right now is the time when I'm really striving to. Alright? Think what you want, right? Point your little fingers of scorn. you know? Yeah, I was in the Book of Mormon, man. There's a story about Lehi, who's the father of Nephi. You probably need quite a bit of context for me to start like telling stories about the, what happened if you've never read it. But you totally can. The Book of Mormon, it's available. If you've got the internet, you can get to it. If you got bookstores, depending on where you're at, shout out to book burning, as in shout about it and say stop it. Because I was thinking about that earlier. Like I'm saying, I might transition as far as the countenance that I got, but I'm still me regardless, right? As we travel through this podcast episode is what I'm saying, episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Because it's not about me. And that's actually a big point that we can kind of correlate with this is one time you're with somebody and they, make you feel like they're just the most peaceful. They're like, I don't know what the word is, but it's like, radiating is what we can say, peace, and you can assign it to that person, but then, one time maybe they're not feeling so hot, they're going through it, and you're around them, and now it's like you had an expectation for them to be all perfectly peaceful, is what it seemed like they were to you at the other time, right? But people got sides to them, man, and well, so does our God. I mean, Jesus Christ himself, I think a lot of times we think about him as the way he describes himself, meek and lowly of heart. But then you hear the, stories about the same exact one and only true living God that there is, screaming in the face of people. I don't want to be choking on my words and saying something I shouldn't, so I'm praying through it real quick. Seeing why I coughed up like that. Because I think the reason is I don't need to brush over this. I need to get into this. This is going to be what we're going to discuss for however long we do. If it's just part of this or the whole thing, listen to this. It's rare for me to cough, but also so much adjustment through my physical body and the way that I sit against this wall. My spine, dude, has pressure put on it in places that it didn't in the past, because when you're tying your shoes unevenly for so many years, this is as real as it is. That's the only reason I'm saying this. I'm going to get back to what I'm saying. I'm not trying to sidestep from something. I'm saying this because it's as real as it gets. Tying your shoes unevenly for years, when you sit against something behind you on your back, like in a chair, only one side of your spine is just about ever placed against that thing. And it's the, I guess it'd be the right side. It's like off to the right of your spine, because your right foot's being tied into external rotation. If you're wearing oversized clothing, it's falling to your dominant side, which is the right side. But even if you're left-handed, like I discussed, clothing designs are quote-unquote right-handed, as far as they'll drop that right side lower. They'll have twists in them that make the right side external, which will just put it lower. And other things, there's buttons, at least on men's shirts. Traditionally, men's shirts have the buttons on the right side. That's just more weight. It's going to pull that side down and forward, which is external, right? Jean designs and a lot of other pants as well are stitched in ways to where the overlap makes the right pant leg sit lower, and so external. So when you're sitting against things, the right side of your spine is what's almost always pressed against what's behind you. And we are about the skeletal system because that's the thing that really causes the imbalances. I talk about how we do one-time releases, but it's not in the muscle tissue. It's where the muscle adheres to the bones. In either its insertions that have been slightly altered, or just along bones where the muscles are trying to hold on to stabilize when they're not allowed to be in their normal position to just contract and release. So when I was sitting here, had my left leg crossed in front of my right. Almost everybody has an easier time crossing their right leg in front of their left. Shout out to the main site of In the Image Clothing Company, the Universal Patterning Series. That's one of the things I talked about. And when I'm sitting here with little Frank the guitar, I was holding him like this in my right hand. the left side of my spine is being pressed against the wall rather than the right side, as if I'm external and dropped on the right. Okay. And again, in that case, that's where your right leg would be, is in front of your left, crossed, sitting on the ground. That also comes from just the stitch within the rear of the pants. Like I'm saying, it's going to push that left glute. No, it's going to push the right glute forward. Same thing as being external, the position of what that's going to do to the rotation of your pelvis, forwardly anterior and tilting to the left. Actually puts the right side of the body external. You want to hear as real as it gets? You are right now. Also, the dreaded collar seam modification, as I talk about, and within In the Image Clothing Company's podcast, the episode titled Oxygen, I talked about having our shirt collars sit evenly around the circumference of our neck. Otherwise, our breathing patterns get really altered and tension gets different left to right in the front of the neck and through all the muscles that are within the neck. They feed down into our upper ribs, our collarbones, the trapezius muscles, like I said, those upper traps that come into the shoulders, the jaw that stabilizes the entire body, that dreaded collar seam, which is this right here if you're watching in visual, but these little seams that are in t-shirt collars so commonly, and we have our modification for the dreaded collar seam modification under In the Image Clothing Company. That's what I have found out of prayer, revelation, trial, and error, and we coined the term, quote unquote. We don't own it. Now, breathing, we have diaphragms, as I've discussed within that episode. Oxygen was the title for In the Image Clothing Company podcast. In the neck, there's diaphragms, as well as in our abdomen, that allow expansion and contraction for breath to come in and out of the body through the mouth or nose. Within the neck, the right side of the neck is what people are breathing with, as far as there's a diaphragm on each right and left of the sides of the trachea, which is the tube in the center that comes down to the sternum here, right? From the nose, the spine, trachea, all these things, the center of the body, the center line that is there. I don't have an opinion on it. I don't have an opinion on any of these things. These are universal truths. Try them for yourself. Understand them for yourself. Don't believe me, because you don't have to. But this dreaded collar seam modification will allow this to sit, meaning the collar of the t-shirt that we do wear, more evenly, because what happens with the collar seam coming as it does, the right side of the neck here is open more, as far as the space between the neck where that diaphragm's at and the collar of the shirt. So when we're almost always breathing with the right side of the neck and that whole side of the body is farther away from its center line and external dropped, the left side then, when it's allowed to be more even with the right, really it's allowing that right to become internal and elevate so that that left can expand. In that case, now I can feel it. I'm choking up right along here, right along the left side of my trachea. I actually made a video for the main site of In the Image Clothing Company in the fall of 2024 titled How Clothing Affects the Trachea. And I went into this. And I've cried at the end of the video because I realized how easily at that time period I could look up with my mouth actually closed. And in 2025 and past years, people have been looking down. Technological age, a lot of times we're looking down. Also, a hand altered will affect the jaw's position here, closing off the right side of the jaw, which is strange because that's the side that we're breathing with the most, but is being inhibited in the ways that it is as well. Because if you're looking down and to the right, it's like contracting this whole side of your, like you take your jawbone and go right below it, right, on your neck, and that's being contracted as we're looking down that way. But even if you're not holding something in your hand, just having that right side of the body external, we're almost always looking right. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Looking Left, and I went into that. You want it as real as it is? Here you are. Thank you for listening, for your sake. Here's the thing. Holding Frank the guitar like that, I'm getting back to this. It's not a runaround. This is, again, I said I'm praying through it. You heard the pause that I had earlier, and I said I don't even know. And I started to try to say something, it didn't come out. I said I didn't know where this was going to go. This is my second episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast that I filmed today. I normally don't enter the podcast this calm, and I'm still throughout it this calm. Not that I'm uncalm when I'm louder, but as far as like level of energy behind this, it's I got like a kind of blissful state within this. It's not me doing something, okay? I want to make this as real as it is. Please hear this as it is. Don't believe me. That's what I'm saying. It's not about me. Okay? As I'm holding Frank the guitar right here, I'm extending my right arm in front of me like this, holding the neck of Frank the guitar with the base of the side wood of Frank the guitar on my right knee. My left leg's in front of my left. That's not how it is. My left leg's in front of my right, which is actually causing that side to be slightly more external in that case, because having my right leg on top of my right, I said it twice. Having my right leg, the outer part of it sitting on top of my left foot, is actually putting that leg closer to my center line, which is actually more internal, right? It's like what I'm saying with the rear seam in the pants pushes that right leg forward and external. What I'm doing now with my left leg in front when I'm sitting on the ground and they're crossed, being my legs, it's actually putting that right glute back farther than the left. And that's how I'm always sitting if I'm cross-legged, for the reason of opposing the patterning that we get into as human beings because of clothing. You want it as real as it is? Here we are in the Image Clothing Company podcast. Now in this position, as I'm reaching with my right arm, what it's doing is actually twisting my body to where my right shoulder comes forward a little bit, okay? And the pressure against the wall behind me is off to the left of my spine, a position it's almost never at. And if you follow those muscles, just meaning check out what side they're on, what I just said, the left, and you're coming up. But not only that, this position holding over here with the guitar, like I was discussing, my right arm's elevated because I'm reaching up here to the neck of Frank the guitar. It's actually allowing the left side of my shirt collar to open up around my neck more than the right side, which is opposing what it would normally be in the patterning within clothing that we get into as human beings. This applies to human beings forever, whether clothing designs change or not, because oversized clothing will fall to the right. Okay? Unless, I guess, you're left-handed and your clothing is entirely centered, stitching and seam-wise, right? Then that could potentially be the opposite, right? But if there's a dreaded collar seam and it's on the left side, if you're wearing button-up shirts and you've got buttons on the right side, causing more weight. If there's a tag in your clothing, and at this time period and for past decades, it's almost always been on the left side. If it's on just one of the sides of clothing, that's going to cause a gap on your left, which will actually drop your right side into external rotation. Even though the gap that's being caused is the left side, the body's trying to compensate. So those tags on the left side of the clothing, I don't talk about that so much, but that can actually put your right foot out anyway. You've got no other imbalances anywhere. That's just what's going to happen mechanically. That's how the body's just going to have to compensate if there's a gap being placed on the left side of the body. See, I didn't expect to get into this at all. This is amazing. So sitting in this position, and I was talking like this, as I'm showing, you put pressure off to the left side of your spine, it actually opens up the whole left side of your neck here. Well, at least in conjunction with all the other positioning things that I described that I'm personally doing right now. And so in this position, I was feeling like a tickle in my left throat right here. My left throat, if you will, right? The left side of my trachea. And I was choking up on what I was saying. And so that's the thing, I was praying through it because I didn't want to be saying something I shouldn't. But it wasn't that I was saying something I shouldn't. It was that I had some things to discuss and describe. How's that? Right? How's that for as real as it gets? So I don't remember what I was saying. I want to make sure and finish it if I was saying something that I needed to, in addition to describing all this. It's not about the people, man. It's about what they're allowing to happen through them. And yeah, man, so a lot of times I'd be like chasing after somebody, not in some kind of unhealthy way. I just mean trying to get like as much time in with somebody because of how they made me feel. And in those times I wasn't. Well, here's the thing. Gosh. You know, go to church, dude. Don't let me tell you what to do, but the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the place to be. Get yourself there if you can. Take people with you if you can. Because that's where you're going to feel that. And that's why I was so clear to say it's not about them in the ways that I did when I said that it doesn't matter if it was a him, if it was a her, whoever made me feel the way that I entered this podcast episode feeling in the Image Clothing Company podcast episode 69 titled It's Not About This Person. It's titled It's Not About Them. Because it's like I'm being stopped, but not in a bad way. It's not like I'm saying anything wrong, but it's like give it a second, right? Who knows? I'm feeling lengthy. All right? I'm feeling stick around for at least a couple hours. I'm feeling who knows? I'm feeling this is the most unstructured podcast episode that we've had under In the Image Clothing Company podcast to date. And I'm feeling it might be just as weird going through the rest of this from this point to the end of it. As far as this episode here. Episode 69, titled It's Not About Them. Because it's not. I mean, what do we want to get into, man? You see me out there in public and you think you want to talk to me because you think it's about me? And I got a level of peace in that instant that doesn't seem like something that could even have been attainable until you saw it. It's not about me. It's about these universal, eternal, unchanging truths that apply to everybody. And it's about the fact that I'm doing all that I can to just dwell within what I like to call the space in between. Putting everything aside and saying, if none of this was here, all these concepts that we come up with, what's still there? And it's that same thing you're seeking in that person that you feel like it's all about. It's the spirit of our living God, Jesus Christ. So what I was saying, I don't know as of this current second where I got to within this. I'm going to kind of revisit it. When I was talking about people feeling lonely within modern societies, but then people living out there in the sticks, out there in the bush, out there in the wilderness, in the forest, out there in a village, or an entirely solitude state, meaning just by themselves, with nobody else around, human being-wise, but they've got the trees, they've got the wind, they've got nature, they've got some animals, the ones that are in the water, the ones that are in the air, the ones that are walking on the same earth they are, and they're not alone. But guess what? Neither are you. But how are they so content out there in the woods and you feeling like you gotta, rummage through everything to try to find something when there's nothing that needs to be done where you're currently at? It's because they know who it's about. They got a lot less distractions out there than a lot of societies would and do. But who it's really about, it doesn't change, no matter what the environment around you might seem to. And sometimes it does, quite a bit. Things change as far as how they look. But that's what I'm saying when I say the truth. Don't believe me, but our God doesn't change. And so it's not about them. It's not about if I ever see this person again. Well, the thing is, I've seen this person before. But what I mean is, like I was saying earlier, I used to put all my hopes and wishes and even prayers, which isn't right to do, into hoping to see that person again, wanting it, expecting it, doing all that I can to go out of my way to see what I could do to, hey, maybe possibly, hopefully run into them at this point, that place, or wherever. Just because I wanted to be around them and hopefully be able to feel that feeling again. I don't want to be, saying something I shouldn't, but I should say this, and I do, and I have within past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, for reference, and other ways and times and places that I have. I don't like the word hope. I don't like to hope for things. We shouldn't hope for things. Take that with a grain of salt, but go out there and salt the earth by telling people how to have faith. Because here's the thing, within the scriptures, hope is kind of like it's a word that gets used in conjunction with faith, and it's kind of like faith is a prerequisite to hoping for something. Because I've had this kind of whole thing about that, and it hasn't felt wrong to me at all, and I've prayed through it as I've said it and things to say publicly like this on In the Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and our intention is to share things with people across the earth forever that can lead them to Jesus Christ. And then I say that I don't like the word hope, and that might seem a little backward if you don't quite understand who our God is, but it's not about hoping for things. And that's what I'm going to say about that for right now. I've touched on that in times and how I have in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I used to hope that I'd see another person again, rather than just having faith that I can experience what I need to, and the Spirit of my living God is there in the ways that He is, and He's everywhere. So it's up to me to do all that I can. And that doesn't mean that there's any point as a human being on this planet that I'm going to get to some kind of level or degree where I'm going to always feel nothing but His perfect love and peace, because we're here to have trials. But don't attribute the feelings that you feel being around another person to that person, because it's not about them. It's about our God being able to work through them. Because you're living out there in the bush, in the sticks, in the wilderness, whatever you want to label it as, and you can feel that feeling without having another human being around. But people also can very, very much get to a good place where they're doing all that they can within their sins they're still making and always will, to where they're, like I said, right, giving off this feeling and exuding, if you will, the Spirit of our living God, Jesus Christ. But so can that puppy dog that you love so much. But it's actually similar to something I said in one of these recent episodes where I was talking about how, it's not like if you have such great love with a spouse, like a wife that you've married if you're a man, or a husband you've married if you're a woman, and then if they die, just because that does happen and we're not in control. I understand it can be hard, but it does happen. It's not like you don't have the opportunity to feel that love again with that person. Think about it like this: the peace and acceptance that you can get from having a dog. They call dogs man's best friend. When your dog dies, it's not the end of the world, because you can get another dog, as much as it felt irreplaceable at the time. And with this next dog that you now have, you can feel the peace and acceptance that you felt with the original dog through this other one, because it's not about the dog. It's about Jesus Christ. It's not about the birds or the fish or the brown bears when you're living out there in the sticks. It's about Jesus Christ. And if we overly assign the importance and the reliance of hoping to feel, again, keyword hoping in this right here, that peace within something that we label as X, Y, W, right? That person that you're just thinking is the only avenue you're ever going to feel that through. That dog that, yes, you love so much, but maybe 15-year lifespan. And most humans nowadays are somewhere around 80, give or take. 85, maybe. Right? We can't overly place importance on one thing to give us the feeling that an ever-present, almighty God gives us. Because that's where it's really coming from in those moments anyway. It wasn't about this person tonight. That's why I came here. As far as to the realm, if you will, of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. And that's why this is the way that it is. And it's such an unconventional podcast as far as my countenance. At least if you're looking at some of the ones that were leading up to this one, right? The other 60s, if you will, right? The 9 before this episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. It's not about them. But this happens in a lot of ways, right? I mean, it can be at an occupation. It can be at a location. It can be at a certain homestead, if you will, dwelling place, somewhere you're living. And if we assign the meaning to these things, that the contentment, comfort, peace, love, acceptance, understanding, fulfillment, whatever it is that makes us feel so beautifully filled inside, it's because what we're really feeling is the Spirit of our living God, Jesus Christ. Don't believe me, right? I'm not trying to tell you something. I'm not trying to give you a religion to have. It's not a religion. This is the truth of all things. So don't believe me on it. Yeah. Because when we're using the word of them, it doesn't have to be just a human being within this context of episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. It's not about them can mean it's not about that home you owned when you were X amount of years old and now you are living in a different one, and you feel in your mind or in your thoughts and your beliefs that you could never feel the level of hominess, is how I'm going to word it, in any other physical dwelling place than that one that meant so much to you. It's because you've assigned a meaning to that. Accumulation of bricks and mortar and potentially sheetrock and wood, screws and nails, glass, plastic. You got some countertops in there, granite maybe, right? One of these, toilets, at least around this part of the world, some porcelain maybe, right? I mean, it's just what it is. A car that you had, and you felt like this car could take you anywhere, but it couldn't really drive very well in the snow when you live in a snowy climate. But just meaning you attached the meaning to this car that it was the only car you could ever feel comfortable or content with. And so now it's been about 10 years since you've had it, and the car you currently have, you just are overlooking what it is because you're expecting it to be what that was, and it's not about that. Right? We attach meanings to things rather than seeing where the feeling that we're getting is really coming from. And so I want to be a little bit careful with this, for my sake, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about what I say. When we, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, have the temples that we do, and we put such emphasis and focus on getting a temple recommend, which just anybody can get a temple recommend, give or take. I mean, right. Really, there's just kind of a screening process, as I've kind of discussed to the degrees that I have within. Okay, I'm not trying to beat around this at all. The point being, right, to keep something a holy, sacred place, you limit what comes in and what goes out. But just by setting parameters around it, that we have to do certain kind of prerequisites, if you will, to be able to have happen. It's like a protected national park, a protected national forest. You can't be dropping man-made items onto this protected place that is intended on staying natural, peaceful, calm, quiet, sacred, and how it would be without worldly things entering it. That's how we approach temple recommends within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're getting recommended to go there, right? Somebody who's very good at picking up their litter when they're not throwing garbage onto the earth can be recommended to going to a wildlife sanctuary because they're probably going to do at least a pretty good job at it within their sinful natures when it comes to keeping the place clean, right? That's how we approach temple recommends within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But I do want to say this, careful for my sake, because I don't want to be saying something public like this and have me be saying something wrong out of I'm only looking to my living God for confirmation on if that's okay or not. I don't care what anybody says, human being wise, equal to me, sinful by nature. But the reason those temples are such a place where you can feel the peace that you do when you enter is because of what I was just saying about kind of like a national park. It's set apart. It's a place that has every intention to just be what the intention is, meaning pure. That's our temples within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, this is the part I want to be careful about, but I'm you can kind of tell how slowly I'm speaking. For me, sometimes I get ripping, dude. Yeah. If you never had the opportunity to enter a temple within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna say this, and that's what's gonna happen. I'm praying through it. Again, I'm not beating around the bush for anybody's ears' sake, for my God's sake. I'm being very careful for my relationship with my God. And placing something public, claiming to be preaching some universal truths, quote unquote, as if I'm speaking out of a third party in that instance, right? Because I don't want to be saying something I shouldn't. But I will say this: it's not really about the temple, right? It's not really about them, that human being who made you feel so good. You ever hear people say that going out in nature is like them going to church? It's not really about church. I'm praying through this. Condemn me all you want, but please don't. I mean, be kind. Okay? Really. Just, please. Just, I know people get a little bit triggery, a little bit touchy, a little bit thinking that one human being, for example, listen to this, is the only thing that can ever make them feel peaceful. And then you talk about that person in a certain way and they want to throw a brick at you, right? All of a sudden you're tied to a stake, getting rocks chucked at you, noggin, dude, breaking your skull in, right? Talk about tectonic plates, dude. You're causing an earthquake in the human being's brain cavity. Okay? I want this to be heard correct. I didn't plan on saying this at all. I didn't know this is where this was going. I didn't know my countenance was going to be like this throughout this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 69, titled It's Not About Them. I didn't know I was going to be playing Frank the guitar and having these pauses through this the way that I have. I didn't know I was going to take my shirt off. I had a button-up shirt on over this. I mean, I still have Frank the guitar on my lap as I'm talking right now, since I had played him last and was discussing the positioning of my body, which I didn't know I was going to discuss that kind of stuff within this. That's what I mean. Okay? This is what it really means to be used as a vessel. Episode 68 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, as a vessel. That's what I mean. Alright? I'm open to just, I'm here, but what's it going to be like? It doesn't matter if I know until it comes. If my real intention is to be obedient. Okay. And it is. For me personally, Evan Strong, to one and only Jesus the Christ. I know that's a little bit much to hear for some people, but it's not about the temple. It's not about the church on Sunday. It's not about reading through the entirety of the Bible or knowing every single passage of the Book of Mormon word for word, or vice versa with those books of scripture, right? And describing them the way that I did. It's not. How many times have you heard me say, if you have, even in this episode here, I've said it, multiple, don't believe me. Don't let me convince you of something. I'm not here to do that. What I'm saying right now is it's about Jesus Christ. And sometimes we get a little bit caught in our ways. We get a little bit too caught up on our ex-girlfriend, wife. For those women out there, your ex-husband or boyfriend, or the fiance on either end that you thought might be the one. And it sure seems like it because you're planning a wedding, but it doesn't quite work out. Well, then it's not about them. Our God's a way maker, the one. And if you can't get to that temple, what? What's going to happen, right? It's not about that. If you can't get to church on Sunday, right? It's not about that. I've said many times in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, I might have worded it a certain kind of way within this one here. I don't currently quite remember. I'm going to say it though, the way that I'm going to say it, the way that I was just leading up into it. People across the entirety of our earth, which is one place. It's no different. Your walls are only there till the wind blows too hard for the construction of them. The sea's only where it is until you got a few big old earthquakes and all of a sudden land masses and forms change. We live on one earth, and we're all here together. No matter where you are, what time period, where you started out your journey here at, what kind of race or whatever you want to think, ethnicity, if you're a man or woman. I mean, you hear the intros of In the Image Clothing Company podcast if you do, right? On everybody, clothing needs to sit blank, 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 and blank where I say it does. Whether you're a man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the earth, any time period. Those are the things that I say. That's how I've worded it many, many times throughout past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I mean, what if you don't get to the temple in your lifetime? What if you don't get to be sitting in a pew at a church in your lifetime, cutting off your hamstrings with the chair height? You know what I'm saying? But what if you're over on some other part of the earth and you know the same person we're worshiping in our church pews, but you don't know all the Bible stories, or maybe any of them? You never even heard of something called the Book of Mormon? And you're like, what is that? Well, it's not about that. It's not about your religion and your rituals that you assign yourself to. And if you don't get it done when it's supposed to be done 3 times every 4 minutes for the rest of your life, and you only did it 2 times 8 minutes ago, or was that the last one before that? The one between 8 and 12, or was it the one between 12 and 16 minutes ago? Which one did I miss one in? Now how long do I have to repent before I can be okay to exist? Well, it's not about that. You said a swear word? Ever? Right? I was going to say, like, since last Sunday, but sometimes I'd be cussing up a storm, dude. Not trying to. Not proud of it. Not going to lie about it, though. As in this instant, I didn't. I'm talking about it. whether you ever knew or not that I've ever said a swear word, ever cussed in my life. It's not about that. It's not about being perfect. It's not about those things that you're holding on to, the necklaces, the prayer beads, the tassels. It's not about your crucifix that's around your neck. I might tear up a little bit. It's not about what item of clothing you wear that constitutes this and that and makes you feel like you're part of those and these. It's not about that. It's not about your lucky rabbit's foot that you feel like you could do anything with but nothing without. It's not about your crystals, your incense. It's not about your mantras, your meditations. No. Anything that you feel like you have to hold on to or you'll never have again, you don't actually have, nor will you ever. It's not about that. How long you want me to go before I tell you what it's about, you know? I mean, it's about Jesus Christ. Plain, simple and plain. Out there on the open plains, or above them, in an aerospace engineer's desk in a satellite in outer space. Wherever you're at, dude. You're out there submerged in the waters in your submarines and things, and machines are going off the hook, and you look around trying to find something real. It's inside you. Where are you? Where do you want to be? What are you going to attach this meaning to that it's about that thing and only if? Talk about conditional. We're the conditional ones. We don't need to place conditions onto other things. Now we've doubled down on potentials. But I know a God who's perfect. And that's who it's about. It's about Jesus Christ. And it's not only about him the way that, the Catholics want to tell you who he is. And it's not only about him the way that the Jews want to tell you that he is. And it's not only about him the way that the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints want to tell you that he is. It's not just about what the Baptists are saying and the whatever, dude. Any denomination of any nation in this place. You can be Caucasian or black or Asian. I can be erasing the words I'm saying, thinking I need to take them back, but it's not about that. Because I mess up. Putting importance on something that I thought it was all about. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully now you do. But it's not about hoping. But it's about knowing. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, It's a Knowing. Because no matter what you think it's about, we get the opportunity to know our God as he is. And so your denomination of this and that isn't going to change the one that gave us the ability to come up with what we want to call denominations. It's about Jesus Christ. What, you think those wolves out there running around thinking they're going to pick which rabbit to eat because he's a part of this thing and you think it's about that? Right? Don't believe me. Please don't agree with me. Please leave me alone. Especially that last one. Urgh. I mean it. I mean that. Because it's not about me. And sure, I've got some good ways of saying things, and I'm really, 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 really good with words. I mean that. But it's not about that. It's about what my words are discussing, which is Jesus the Christ. It's about where my gifts have come from, which is my God who gave them to me. I put all the importance on my gifts that I want. It's not about that. Spend my entire life saying, as long as I can speak so well, I can be content. And all of a sudden, I accidentally put something in my mouth that just came out of a boiling pot. Puts a hole through my tongue or something bizarre, dude. And I can't speak anymore for the rest of my time on this earth. It wasn't about that. It's about Jesus Christ. Because all my words are doing right now is pointing us to Him. About to start throwing some hands, dude. But I only got 2 of them, so I'd run out of ammo quick. You know what I'm saying? It's not about that. So yeah, it's not about them. Them can be him, them can be her, them can be a materialistic thing or a belief. But it's not about those things. Because they can leave. And now they're off the scene. And all of a sudden this lightning quick type of thing, tighter. You feel like you're being constricted when things are leaving. You know who doesn't leave? Somebody who's ever present. Our living God. And He is as He is. He is who He says He is. He's not who this book or that book of scripture might say, but hey, who translated this thing 14 times before it got in your hands? He's who He is. He's not only if you spend this amount of time in a church pew or those amount of days in a temple before you end up, choking on your biscuit and dying, and whoa, you met Him before you were expecting to? Well, you're back home. And that's what it's about. Realizing that that's the point, is to go back to Him, and we all will. We're all getting judged. We're all going to meet Him again. Whether you've been sitting down in your... whatever, dude, right? I mean, what are you? You Muslim? Cool. All right. You Hindu? You out there doing whatever you're doing, You Buddhist monk? You out there doing your Taoist stuff, whatever that is. Meaning, I don't know. But do you know what I'm doing? It doesn't matter. It's not about that. It doesn't matter, dude. Right? There's a lot of denominations of Christianity preaching one God and division of His children. What's that about? Well, it doesn't matter because it's not about it. No matter what, it's about Jesus Christ. You see what I'm saying, dude? I'm about to start throwing feet. Ran out of hands, How triggered are you? Right? I mean, who are you trying to protect so much? Yourself? Claiming that you're defending all these religions and things. These people's lives matter more than the other ones. Really, you're just trying to be the hero. It's not about that. That's so funny, right? I mean, whose lives we're going to say matters? And what does that mean? The other ones don't? I mean, oh, sure, you're a Christian. Right? What does that mean? right? I mean, yeah, you posting it on the rear window of your vehicle. What's that about? It's not about a sticker. It's not about a caption on the internet. It's about Jesus Christ. It's not about those. It's not about them. It's not about that. Some pretty righteous Christians out there that just downed a 6-pack of beer, right? There's a lot of really unrighteous Christians out there that are in church pews every Sunday. Right? Someone just got out of serving a prison sentence, but they know Jesus Christ. The other person's got the cleanest record on the planet, but they're someone you don't want to be around because it's not about that. You see where I'm coming from yet? Because I know where we all came from. Don't believe me. Yeah, bro, it's not about it, dude. It's not about them. There's always another them, meaning another person who's willing. You want to know what it's about on our end? It's about our willingness. Some laws that we get governed by. Obedience and sacrifice. I mean, really, it's about, hey, can you try to realize that it's not about you? Because it's about them until they're not there, and now it's got to be about something else, you know? That's the thing. I mean, I came into this and I was like, man, yeah, this person really was filled with the light of Christ. And you know what it made me do is start a podcast episode to help other people know that they can be that. Because it's not about them, but it's about what they're willing to do. Draw nearer to me, and I'll draw nearer to you, says our God. You can draw nearer to him by being as far away from a church as you can be, just like geographically. The other guy's sitting there in the pew taking notes on so many books that he's writing on his pants because he ran out of room on his paper. But, you know, it's not about that. At all. Get that through your thick skull. Remember when I said I'm feeling lengthy? I don't know where we're at. I currently have the numbers that are counting on the screen of this device I'm using to film episode 69 of the Image Clothing Company podcast titled It's Not About Them, covered up, so I can't tell exactly where we're at. And by exactly, I mean who knows. But it's not about that. It's about, hey, let's keep talking until I've said what I need to. Right? I mean, I've done stuff like this, you know, you find a good TV show. I'm currently watching this show. I haven't said the title of it, but I'm going to. I don't know how much of it's been me holding it back versus just it hasn't really been something I've needed to say or what, but I definitely want to, it doesn't matter what I want. I'm going to say, I've been watching this TV show, the one that I've referenced in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, when I've talked about the state of Alaska within the United States of America. The TV show is titled Life Below Zero. It's put out by National Geographic and Disney, whoever owns whatever. I think Disney might own National Geographic nowadays or whatever. But, right, just want to give credit where credit's due. It's a beautiful show. I'm so grateful for it. It's taught and shown me a lot that I've been able to get a lot of understanding and feel a lot of love from. And I've had this thought in my head because I never grew up watching TV, but everyone around me seemed to always be watching it. And so I think that's a big part of why I had this view on what television was. But now I'm so appreciative for this TV show. And we can get into moments like that and like not want it to be over, you know. There's only a certain amount of seasons for the TV show. And once they're done, scary. It's not about that. It's about what is it doing for you. Those feelings, like I was saying, that love that I'm feeling from these people that I'm watching, the dynamics of them with each other and them reacting with nature. It's not about a TV show. It's about the feelings. And those feelings aren't just something that we can label as this, that, or the other thing. That's our living God expressing himself through us the way that he does. It's about Jesus Christ. And that's the thing is when that show starts, it says something, I think it does say just like this, but something similar to this. If not, it says intense violence, vulgar language or something. Something like that, right? They're cussing all the time and they're killing animals, and I'm vegetarian. And it's like, what? It's not about that. The views of who's right, who's wrong, who's what and who's what, who's black, who's white. He said it. Right. It's not about that. That's funny. No, it's about Jesus Christ. And that's what I'm saying. Sure, somebody swears, but you grew up in a household that doesn't do that, right? You grew up in a household that doesn't listen to rap music. But I grew up basically alone, as far as no other human beings really around me or doing much of anything with me or talking to me or looking at me or acknowledging me at all. But I had some rap music in my earphones that actually spoke to me and filled me with the love of Christ? Question mark? The answer is yes, because it's not about a label of quote unquote rap music is quote unquote of the blank and blue and blah, right? How labeling are we getting? People call rap music evil or whatever because it's got a label and it's got those 3 letters, which means something, right? You're Muslim and somebody else grew up not anything else, right? But not Muslim. And so they are automatically thinking you're this and that and 4 other things that they can't even say. Right? It's not about that. It's about Jesus Christ. Because if we're sticking with what the actual title is literally worded as, it's not about them. You got a whole list of 7,500,000 labels that we can place on anything. And it's not about them. What if there's no labels to be had? What if there's no languages to be had? Getting a little bit out of your comfort zone? Well, okay. Good. Yeah. Man. What's it really about, right? And where are you really going to find this peace? That seems to only be in the location that you have felt it at one point in your past? We live in one eternal round, one eternal now. It's not about those things, man. It's about Jesus Christ. I think the dog examples are really, really cool, though, because that happens a lot. Not that it's wrong to really cherish and love your pets, they can be companions, but again, in the ways that they are Christ-like. And is that weird? Is that a little bit too far-fetched? With Rough Ruffman? Shout out to PBS Kids, right? As long as that's who made that. I said that a few episodes back, too, referenced that show, Fetch with Rough Ruffman. It was, a show about 10, 15 years back, give or take, from this point. Today's date, 23rd of February, 2025. But, it's like what I was saying about, it's not about the temple. And that's scary to a lot of people, man. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You telling them that, dude, ooh. Some of them don't know where to turtle into because their shell just got shocked. I mean, what if something happened and we get, captured and we're in some kind of camp from some captor that we didn't decide, and we put all our importance on getting into a man-made building? That, yes, I understand what it is, and I'm not trying to say that it's not a beautiful building that is, again, set apart, like those nature reserves, and it houses the spirit of our living God, because we're very intentional to keep it a very reverent place. I get it. But again, you're a captive now. And before you got captured, maybe you had every kind of intention in your mind that no matter what, you had to be going to the temple X amount of times per who knows for the rest of your existence on this planet as a human being. But now it's not going to happen because you can't leave this camp that you've been stuck into. Who knows? I mean, you chained up. You got barbed wire times a million. You're not going to be climbing and getting over electric fences because these people want to house you for some reason. Sometimes our pets probably feel like that, right? But we love them. And what's it about? A label? Your pet's kennel, probably looking at like the place I just discussed. I mean, who knows, right? I want this as real as it is. You put all your importance on one thing. I mean, what? Are you sanding out the ends of your teeth? Just, again, as weird as it could be, right? Just as I want to make this just so, blatantly clear that we don't have control. And our God has no limits. And so, right? Holy, dude. I mean, yeah, dude, yeah, okay. The point being, I mean, if you can never get to another pew in your life, well, a lot of people out there in the sticks connected to a really, really, really high degree. Not that we're comparing, but in just a very good way, the way that we're commanded to be, right? We're commanded to do things like pray continuously without ceasing, right? I mean, stuff we're never going to live up to, but we're striving to get to the temple X amount of times a week, right? No, this is real. This is real. This is good. Yeesh. It's a little bit much for who? I don't know, but it's supposed to be said. I'm not saying something other than the words I'm prompted to right now. So, it's not about that, right? This guy's got a tattoo, and you've been told, ooh, no. That's where I draw the line. In the sand? Tide came up. Now you're homies, right? It's not about these things, dude. It is about Jesus Christ, right? Because we start labeling things. We start labeling people as the only person that can make me feel blank. As in, insert whatever in the blank, right? The most peace that you could think you could have. But it's not true. Because all of a sudden you go from being a city girl to moving out of the country. And the whole time up until the move, you thought you could never be content anywhere besides Starbucks. Shout out to Starbucks. I'm not a fan. And then you get out there in the countryside, and you would never go back if you had any kind of say over it. Right? You think it's all about your girlfriend until you break up. And you realize, man, I kind of lost myself in just trying to be everything she wanted me to. You're saying, right? Oh, man, right? It's not about her. It's not about them. It's about Jesus Christ. And we could talk about this until the cows come home. But it's not about that. Because what if they all got stuck in the cattle guard and now you got this pile of cows? I mean, oh gosh, how silly do you want it? Because I want it real. And sometimes we're laughing at things when we realize that we never needed to be afraid. We're not commanded to do anything more than not fear. So that's really where our highest importance should be, is saying, what all can we do to look unto our God in every thought and doubt not and fear not? Because really we're attaching all our security that we want to the fears that we have. Because we know how to navigate the things that we've had to deal with for X amount of training exercises, if you will. You know, you're growing up thinking you know how to operate and move through the earth and the environment you're at as long as it looks like blank and as long as you're playing the role of blank, meaning insert here, right? Those blanks. And so we think it's all about just making sure that we can be the one who has all the right answers, makes everybody else feel content, tries to control the situation, does everything they can do to be the scapegoat. I mean, what end of whose opinion do you want to be on? Because it's not about them. It's about Jesus Christ. And that doesn't always look like meek and lowly of heart. But sometimes it looks like overturning temples in a table. I'm going to word it the way that it's intended to be. I mean, he's in there throwing over the tables in the temple, right? I mean, that's you can read about that in the Holy Bible. He's screaming in the religious leaders' faces saying, "You blind guides!" Right? You're trying to guide all these people, but you're blind yourself because you're saying you're only righteous if you're... And then lay out X amount of commandments and rules that it's not about. It's not about them. You think you're only going to be content, right, if you come into episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled "It's Not About Them," from just having been in an interaction with somebody who puts you into a state of chillness, and you're sitting there playing Frank the guitar, and you don't know how the rest of the podcast is going to go, but you understand that it's not about where you just came from, but it's about why you experienced what you did. And that only comes from one: an unconditional God. That's who it's about. See what I'm saying? Yeah, you do. But don't believe me. Don't let me tell you what you believe. Right? I mean it though. So here's the thing though, in all seriousness, as we've been this whole time. It's a lot of denominations to Christianity. And a lot of times we're within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I will say, again, as I have, it's the true church. Don't believe me. But again, I mean, you never get yourself inside that building that we're talking about quite often. We call it temple. What? Where you going? You're not going to make it to heaven? Don't believe me, but you still will. Yes, you still will. A lot of people within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you're looking at thinking, all right, cool. I've been told this is the true church. Let me go investigate a little bit. So what, everybody in here is just going to be perfect then? No, and you know why? Because it's not about them. It's about Jesus Christ. Okay? Just make like crazy faces. Yeah, dog, it's not about them. There's always another Johnny, and there's always another Smith, right? Shout out to the state of Utah is what I'm saying around this time period and a little bit past, as in this point back type of past. Past years, right? A lot of Smiths around here, dude. Who's it about, right? Is it about all the prophets because they did some great things? No. It's about who they were serving that allowed those things to happen. It's not about them, it's about Jesus Christ. Do you see what I'm saying? Or am I saying what you're seeing because you already understand this stuff and you're glad that someone else is agreeing with it? I love that, you know, you hear somebody start talking in a way that you understand things and it's like, oh, good, you know? Whew, relief. You know, not that I'm relying on anybody else's opinion, but it's good to be around somebody who's not going to judge me for the same thing they did last week, right? Yikes. Yeah, people trying to get you to be a perfect Christian. It's not about them because it's not about that. It's about Jesus Christ and the fact that he saves us from our sins. Before we do them, we got redeemed before we had the option to mess up. What's up with that? You know? Is it about those sins? Nope, no. It is not about those. It's not about them. It's not about it. It's about him. It's about the one. It's about the one who never leaves the one behind, as we say, right? It's about Jesus Christ. And sometimes we kind of maybe think that we can experience him in only one way. And so that's what I was really trying to get at and did. But I'm going to hit it as much more as I do if within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 69, titled It's Not About Them, because if we go to the temple, right, or not, is that going to change who we are? The answer is no. Don't let me tell you something, but we are a son for all those male human beings out there. And we are daughters for all those female human beings out there. So I said the word we, but I'm not a daughter, right? But we're all just children of our living God, Jesus Christ, first and foremost, and last and always, if we can say that, right? Just, I've never quite worded it that way is what I mean, but on both ends of everything, right? On every end of anything, like I say, right? So here's the thing. I love it so much because I was thinking about this, right? I mean, sometimes people feel really lonely, like I was saying, and I don't. You know, I'm watching this beautiful show, Life Below Zero, like I said, National Geographic and Disney. It's on Disney Plus, the platform where I have been viewing it on, and it says National Geographic when I, click on it. So just trying to give credit for real because I'm appreciative and I'm just, I've got a public podcast here. Wow. In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Isn't he cool? It's not about me. I mean it, right? But here, I mean this though too. I'm watching these people and they're living out there in really, really, really remote lives and they don't feel lonely. And I wouldn't either. I'm stuttering through that because I was like not wanting to say it because I don't want to be bold about something that I'm wrong about, right? And I don't want to say that. And then all of a sudden, like if it happens, next thing you know, where'd Evan Strong go? He had a podcast. Oh, the kid moved to the woods. It's like, what? And I get out there like 3 days in and I'm like, whew, where's all the people at, But no, I don't get lonely like that. And the reason I don't is because how I was saying, that city girl she moves out to the country and never thought she'd leave the city till she did. Now she never wants to go back. Because it's not about what we assign our meanings to. It's about Jesus Christ. And actually, really, it's when we get less things that he becomes more apparent to us. I mean, he's always just what he is, but our intentions get blurred and skewed and all the things, you know. You're driving through the filth of life and you got bugs covering your windshield, you know. And then you try to do some things to act a little bit more Christ-like and say, hey, what can I do to be willing to do your will, Father? And all of a sudden you've drug some windshield wiper blades across that big old sheet of glass on the front of your vehicle. You know, you got a clearer view on what's going on because you moved outside of the city that you always thought it was about, spending every morning in the Starbucks. Shout out to Starbucks. I'm not a fan. And then next thing you know, you're in the woods and living off the land. And you feel like you've finally reached it. Because in the city, you were just out there floating at sea, you know what I mean? And now you finally hit some real rock solid earth to build your foundation on. The gospel of Jesus Christ, the things that never leave, right? Because it's not about them and those and these, if those things can leave. Because autumn comes, right? Everything falls down and gets built back up. But it all happens on the same earth that our God created. And it all happens with children of his doing the work. And it all happens when the opinions are coming and going, and when the winter snow is snowing, and then the spring winds start blowing the new seeds across these freshly cleared lands of fields. Right? It's on the camel's heels and the ocean seals. I mean, right? It's not about them. It's about Jesus Christ. The reason, if you're watching in visual of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and right there I was going like this, like moving my hand in motion as if like it's rolling like a wheel, like okay, like it's still going, because that's what I'm saying is it's one eternal round. What I was thinking in my head is, hey, we could have 1,000 episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast title, It's Not About Them, and we could talk about anything that it's not about. To give some perspective and some context and some understanding and some, you know, give people some maps, brother. Right? You give somebody the best map in the world by telling them, I don't know. Not that I don't know the answer. I don't know how. It's like I'm saying, I mean, in a good way, I don't know. In a good way, we could talk about this forever. It's not like I'm sick of talking about it. It's like, well, this really could just go on. And so that's why I said that whole 1,000 episodes. That's why I mentioned that I'm doing this thing with my hand as if it's like going on and on, even if you're only in audio. I wanted to make it clear. This is really what the gospel of Jesus Christ is. Don't let me tell you something. This is really what In the Image Clothing Company could be every single episode. Just talking about things it's not about. So we can go through the whole process of elimination. And each time we get back down to our God. As the only thing that it is about. Any, every, and all of the times. Right? I mean, that's it, dude. So, I mean, your temple looks like this and mine looks like that. Right? And I'm all right about it until my dog ate the marshmallows off of it. Because I built my little temple diagram of what I think it's got to look like out of popsicle sticks and corn syrup. You know what I'm saying? I mean, again, I don't want us to focus, and so, I mean, don't care about what I want or don't, but for the sake of, it is about our God, who is above everything. So I don't want us to focus on how the temples look. The reason I say that so bold, right, like that, that's a little bit much, huh? You turned it off because you didn't like it? The reason that's awesome. The reason I was so bold about it like that is because I want to say this. Our physical bodies are temples, right? The way it's worded within Scripture. And so we can talk about the temples within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We can talk about the Hindu temples, the Buddhist temples, right? We can talk about the mosques and the synagogues and the sanctuaries, right? We can talk about the nature reserves or whatever you want, dude. You know what I mean? You getting this yet? If not, that's okay. I mean, stick around. Like I say, you got a problem with us? Stick around. Deeper context, more understanding. I got some lengthy content, brother. I'm just some kid. Ooh. You gonna listen to me? Please don't. How many times I say don't believe me? A lot. Okay? I like to throw a little bit back and forth to show it's not about me, because it's not about them. And I'm just one of them. An equal to you and him and her. Sinful by nature human being. But I want to say this, furthering what I was saying there. Our bodies are temples. And so that's why I do the whole like marshmallow and popsicle sticks. You know, you're building a temple physically, but it's like on a tabletop in your house, right? Versus some beautiful big temples that are physically large with stone or metal or whatever it is, right? And they're from thousands of years ago and somehow still standing. Or it's freshly baked out of the oven, but it's actually just, cake in the shape of a temple. I really mean this. I really mean this. Our physical bodies are temples, and I mean all of this is what I mean. I love this is what I mean by saying that twice. I really mean this. Hey, there's a third. Our physical bodies. But what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to look, again, the whole tattoo example, right? The whole, this guy's got 14 piercings. And they would say it like that to make it silly. I'm not even going to say it the correct way, right? But he's poking holes in his body in places that you don't have naturally as a human being. You know what I mean? Your temple's got these diagrams of those things and these stained glass windows portraying something that's not what you thought it should have been. And that temple's got just about nothing in it and is entirely clean. And this one's got so many trinkets and gizmos and stuff that even Ariel's not even knowing how to get around in it, right? Gadgets and gizmos galore. Shout out to Disney, brother. I love it. How many opinions you want to have on what? I don't care. Don't listen to me. You can listen to me if you want, but half the people probably turn this off because of any number of reasons. But our physical bodies, dog, that's so cool to be able to say. What I just said about turning this off. That's amazing. You know, our bodies are temples. And so that's why within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we're very clear to say this is the truth, right? We've been given this body. I mean, talk about In the Image Clothing Company. Okay, I will. That's what the podcast is 1/3 of our whole company. We've been given this one thing, and it's labeled as a temple for those reasons. You know, something we call a temple is something that we usually place a good amount of importance on. I just hiccuped a couple times. But our physical bodies, again, so, you know, you got this opinion and view about whatever you want and thinking this and that and 4 other things about you never can touch your body in any kind of way besides exactly how it is, meaning you can't be drawing on it, you can't be piercing holes into it, you can't be doing it, touching it this way, that way, those things, and that other one, except for the people that didn't know that before they did. And so what, you condemning them? Well, what about the scripture that says you can't be held accountable? I don't think any scriptures say exactly that word for word as far as true doctrine from our living God, Jesus Christ. But what it does say is we can't be held accountable for things we don't know. And so a lot of people, they meet Christ at who knows what age, right? They live in their whole life just trying to navigate, and they don't know what to do because their parents were a little bit wacko. And all of a sudden they're 8 8 years old, okay? They're 25 years old. I am currently speaking now. They're 80 years old. AT? Right, there's a T, I guess, not a D, but I'm a Utahn, so shout out to the mountains. Wow. All right. I love this. Truly, this is amazing. I really, really love this so much because this is the thing. You can't be held accountable for what you don't know. And so all of a sudden you're seeing someone sitting in that church pew with you, but they got tattoos and you don't think that's okay. Right? But they got them about 18 years ago. And they just started coming to church last year, and they now know they don't want to be anywhere else but where they are. Right? In the presence of our living God, Jesus Christ. Inside a church that's dedicated to worshiping him. Ideally as he is, but guess what? There's some sinful by nature people in there. Just as you are as well. Just I'm meeting every single person in the building. And they got some views and doing some things that you're not so fond of, and so you remove your records from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you start calling people this and that and condemning things and calling things something that they aren't. I did that. Talk about publicly speaking your sins on a podcast for the entire globe. In the Image Clothing Company podcast. The founder's doing it, Evan Strong. That's what I'm saying, dude. I was a little bit denouncifying. I want to say it in a silly way, because what you going to do? You're going to kick me while I'm down, right? I mean, I'm struggling because I got deceived and people are wanting to say something, right? I mean, someone went through something, they got a tattoo about something or the other thing, or maybe it was something else, I don't remember, right? Like, who knows is what I'm saying. But you're thinking, oh, it's all about you can't be doing this and that to your physical body. It's a temple. Oh, yeah? I get that. But I also get that this person grew up in a gang community. And they didn't know what to do at the time because they didn't know where to turn at the time because they were growing up without a dime. And they didn't have anything or know what to put their importance on because they were told that it's about this and it's about that and it's about those things. And I'm going to take the accumulation of all of them and say, it's not about them. Episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Check it out. All right? Because really what it's about is Jesus Christ. Really what it's about is the one that healed the Samaritan woman when she did everything that everybody said she shouldn't have done. Right? I mean, how real do you want to get? Because that's the thing, is preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's not just only about doing it in a way where your voice is so calm and peaceful and whatever. But sometimes I'm screaming over here. But you know. Yeah. Whatever you think it's about, dude, please don't. Because ideally we don't have opinions and we can see things as they are. And our God is who he says he is, not who we get to interpret him as being. And so, it's not about them. Whatever it is that you're thinking you gotta place all the importance on, you gotta hold on to so tightly until you realize it's a cactus and you got pain in your hand now because you never wanted to let something go that was hurting you. All your beliefs about you're wrong if, right? Well, it's not about them, the opinions and the beliefs. It's about Jesus Christ, the one who overcomes all. Yeah, dude. I mean, dude, I remember growing up and just, seeing stuff that way because I was taught it by other people who thought that that's what it was all about. And people telling me that if people did this thing, that thing, and had 4 other behaviors in their back pocket that you didn't know about, then, once once they did a handstand and everything fell out onto the ground, you turn your back and run the opposite direction faster than your treadmill goes, and all of a sudden you're running through the wall. That was such a weird explanation in the best way, dude. I love that. I just mean, in all seriousness, dude. I mean, what's it about? You know, all the things that you know about. Well, what about the things you don't? You know. And what's it about as well, right? The person, whether it's a man, a woman, or whatever. Because it was a girl. This wonderful woman that it's not like any kind of thing about like a relational thing between her and I as far as like a romantic thing. This girl's actually engaged and she invited me to her wedding. And so I want to make that very clear, right? I'm not like being like a little bit, wishy-washy about if it's a man or a woman because like some kind of reason like that. That's why I said just now that it's just this woman who's so Christ-like. But is it about what's it about? Because let's pick her apart for a second. Is that okay, Father? I don't want to make that a joke. It's not. I'm sorry that I covered myself. That's real repentance. Sorry for covering myself when I tried to be overly sensitive. Holy cow. I meant it. That was a real prayer. I was saying, is that okay, Father? Legitimately praying, okay? Because I'm going to pick this girl apart. But yeah. Holy cow. Real repentance in this instant, public, verbally out of my mouth, even through the podcast. Not that you're repenting for other people to hear, but I'm repenting for saying, not that it's a joke, for saying those words. As if like I gotta cover myself from saying something, as if I'm overstepping. Again, what? I got a tattoo before I knew about it was a wrong thing to do. I don't have tattoos, just clarifying, just so that I'm not saying something that's not correct. But right, I mean, like it's these things I'm talking about, because that's what I'm saying. We picked this girl apart. And sure, tonight and the past times that I was noticing what I noticed that caused me to come into this episode the way that I did, so peaceful and content and filled with the light of Christ. But what? Is it about that girl in her current time and she's only so wonderfully Christ-like? Or what? Did she do something when she was a little girl and she kicked someone in the shin for basically no reason, and that's a sin? So what's it about? That's the thing. It's not about her. But it's about our God. I mean, how perfect is your girlfriend until you finally realize who she really is? You know what I mean? It's not about them, bro. I mean, holy. Yeah, I mean, it's not. Because that's the thing is, yeah, you got some crazy type of sins going on, dude. I mean, you're doing some terrible things that are just universally terrible. But then that was your past. And now somebody meets you and you're just like doing a lot of humanitarian work, not for the sake of labeling something, but like as far as what that means, like you're doing a lot of help for people with no compensation, right? And somebody meets you at that point in your life and they're like, dude, you're doing a lot of really good stuff, man. You know, I really see what you're doing, and that's a great thing, man. And the guy's like, dude, yeah, but it's not about me, bro. In my past, I was in gangs and I actually killed a couple people, right? Got out of prison and turned my life around because I met my God. And so now what? Now you're like, oh, shoot, I don't think I think the same about you anymore. I'm a hightail it in the other direction, you know. You turn around and skedaddle. Run away because, you thought it was about them. And it never was. Nor could it be. It's about Jesus Christ and our willingness to be his. Because guess what? We already are. All right? Check this out. In the Image Clothing Company. It's on the back end. We're never going to get our bodies to do anything. It's about allowing them to work. Check this out. We're sons and daughters of our living God, Jesus Christ. We're never going to get ourselves to be righteous. It's about allowing our God to work through us. Because it's not about us, about all the accomplishments we did, right? That's why I was saying about the whole humanitarian thing, and then I very clearly worded it as like, as far as doing things with no compensation, because it's, people like to do that, right? They'll walk around to people talking about how many charity organizations they're part of, but they're really trying to make it about them. It's not about them. right? It's not. But it's about our God working through them. And now he's got himself this physical vessel. That one human being. Again, shout out to episode 68 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. As a Vessel is the title. This person's allowing themselves to make it about Jesus Christ. How's that? Right? Does that sound good? That sound like something we can try to do? Sounds like something I'm going to mess up at. Yeah. Oh, shoot, dude. I love it. That's awesome, bro. Yeah. And I can just about guarantee that. I'm not going to guarantee you, dude. I'm going to mess up. But I'm going to try to do that. Probably mess up at it, though. You know, talk about being simple by nature. That's what I do, is talk about that, because that's what I am. Because it's not about me. That's unreal, dude. So I'm going to just hang out, you know, sit back and, oh, you know, I just saw it too. I'm going to look. 2:26. Yeah, we're into this, dog. I wasn't trying to look at the time. I really, really wasn't. I started sitting like this, though, with my feet up in the air, right? Because I'm allowing my body to work. And so I got my core activated always, just as it would naturally be. It's not about me, but, you know, that's just how the body works. Again, it's about Jesus Christ, the one who designed it. I'm not joking. That's just as real as all this is, as far as everything we're talking about within this. Again, the only thing that it ever is about is Jesus Christ. But what I am saying is, you don't got to believe nothing, but I wasn't trying to look, but I saw it too, and so I'm like, check it out, you know, how long it's really been. But it doesn't matter, dude. Right? Shout out to Jim Carrey, dude. Yeah, dude. It's really funny, man, because I'm going to wrap it up. I want to make it very clear. And again, you don't have to believe anything about what I'm saying. It's not about me. But I'm not just wrapping it up because I realize what time it is. And it's like, I guess we better. I don't know. If you saw and I discussed what happened, I started getting a little bit moving around and just like, I'm not restless. Like it's time, like I want to move. But it was kind of like, you know, things are transitioning into, it's time to wrap it up. And I mean, this is, like I said, this is how every single episode could be titled, and we could have more context and talk about different things, or at least slightly different things in every single one of them. And like I said, like something 100,000 episodes or whatever, right? I mean, because we really could, and they could all be just about what it's not about. Right? Again, that process of elimination. We're getting down to, hey, it's about Jesus Christ. But the whole thing, I think, that's so cool. Oh, I said I'm wrapping it up, but who knows, right? I mean, it's not about me, right? I love it because it's that real of how simple it gets. Because that's what I was just saying is, a lot of times, because we can talk about what it is or isn't about, and we can talk about how to see our God as he is, but then we're saying something about it, right? The big thing is, I think it is a beautiful thing to do, the whole process of elimination. Because you're looking around at this earthly existence and things that are around you, and then that's how you start to see, like, well, then what really is real, if people are wondering? It's like, well, it's not about that, or that, or that, or that. Oh, shoot. I guess we could just say this all day long, because it's not about anything besides something that's not quite physically tangible right now to us in this earthly life. But it's something that, like I say, is the space in between, right? It's in and through and under and around and intertwined with all of it. But it's none of those things. It's Jesus Christ, which is the Spirit of our God. It's a still small voice. It's between this and that and those. And like I said, right, it's not that dog, but you can feel the Spirit of our God through him. But it's also not those puppies over there, but you can also feel the Spirit of our God through them. It's not about this girl that just really was just beaming light in no kind of exaggeration way. This woman's amazing. Again, I love that she's engaged. for the sake of whoever's on the receiving end of this, because it's not about me and trying to get somebody to hear my podcast episodes, so hopefully they, like in a roundabout way, find out that I really like them so much, right? I want to make it as silly as it is so that you can see what I'm really saying. Because the point is, right, it's not about her or the next her or the him that was kind of like her but the opposite gender now, right? It's not about any of them, but it can be, as far as the feelings that I feel of my God speaking through them. When it's somebody I had a negative opinion on out of my own doings, but all of a sudden they're standing up on the pulpit telling me about how hard their life was, and that's why they're so rough and tumble when I'm so quietly sensitive. But then what they're saying convicts me to my soul, and I feel that love and light of Christ. Because in that moment, he's speaking through them. And in the other ones, whether he was or wasn't, I was too caught up in my own beliefs and thought it was all about blank, blah, blue, and blee. You ever seen... I'm not going to mention that. What's that about? Why didn't he say it? Was it the most disgustingly terrible thing ever? Or was it just a little irrelevant? Or did he just think he wasn't going to be so wise and impactful if he said something that might not have been as great as the rest of the things, and so he didn't want to ruin the whole podcast, especially towards the end, right? Was it something that he knows that he doesn't want us to know, and so he's holding it back? It's for those kind of reasons. I'm not even going to say it regardless of what it was. That's amazing. Wow. Talk about being used as an example, dude. Right? In this way. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it so clear. If you knew the sins that I've made, what? You going to look at me different? If you came into it thinking I'm a saint. You know? It's not about those sins, but it's about Jesus Christ who can wipe them clean. If we are willing to change. All right, so this is episode 69 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. It's not about any of it. It's about Jesus Christ. Yeah, dog, I'm so sinful, bro. I'm doing some good things here and there. Except for the fact that I'm being prideful right now, which is a sin. Talking about how good things I've done. See what I'm saying? Episode 50 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, I talked about how we're just like always kind of going to be halfway there, right? Zero to 100 with a rest stop. Yeah. You know what I mean, though? Because, like, I'm going to drive all the way through until you need to go to the bathroom, right? And you get there and somebody else was driving as well in a different vehicle. And they're like, dude, we got here so much quicker than you guys. And what, did you stop or something, dude? We win. And you're like, it's not about that, dude. Because you're there for the experience and not for the competition. I'm here to ride the wave of, hey, I'm expecting to sin. I mean, as you get more righteous, yeah, check this out, dude. I mean, you know, the how does it go? The bigger the whatever, the bigger there's something else and stuff, right? It's always bigger in Texas. How does it go? The bigger levels, bigger devils, or something like that, right? That's a way to say it, regardless of if that's how I was trying to exactly word it. That's the thing is the more good you're doing, the harder you sometimes get bombarded, you know? Let me knock on some titanium real quick, just because, again, it's not about that, you superstitions and garbage. I mean, we live a life with a whole bunch of stuff that we don't need. Oh, shoot, dude. I just hit my scapula on the windowsill when I did that. That was some pain that got caused in my body. But it's not about that. Like, you know what I mean? We can get all into whatever, dude, and something else too if we decide. But the whole point is Jesus Christ, and I mean it. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Again, I mean, because I've mentioned things like this, hypotheticals, you think the only way you can experience peace or like ensure that you could is if you can make sure that you can go on your hikes every weekend or whatever. And that's great and fine, except for the reason you're going on hikes is to feel the feelings of peace and comfort and love that our living God is allowing you to experience through the avenue of what you are labeling as a hike. But really, you're on a paved trail that was man-made, right? It's just, again, hypothetical on any end of whatever. The point being, all of a sudden you get some kind of physical injury that doesn't allow you to hike, at least not on your own two legs the way that you were in the past. And now what? You think you can't feel those feelings of peace and comfort and all the, beautiful things that do come from our God. And that's entirely false, right? Again, you go into the temple 3 times a week until somebody throws you into some camp because you have been invaded in the current place that you're living from a different part of something else, right? Yeah, let's get as vague as we can get to show how real it is. Because it's about Jesus Christ. It's not about those. It's not about that. It's not about these. It's not about them. And as sure as all get out isn't about the woman who made me feel this coming into this episode, but it was about the Spirit of our living God that was dwelling within her. And a lot of it really was her willingness, but none of it would have come out of her. It's coming through her. It's about Jesus Christ. I said lengthy. We're sticking around. It's a competition. I'm winning. Oh, gosh. Let's take some rest stops, dude. Yeah. You got to stop to rest, so, Shoot. It's like I want to publicly pray, but I don't want to do it out of any kind of recognition. I don't want to do it out of any kind of because what I mean is, I see sometimes people praying and it gets a little bit not so authentic. I mean, and you know me, dude. Sometimes I don't want to be throwing jokes in a prayer and then being the example of how to pray. But oh, guess what? It's not about me and I don't get to decide. It's about our God. And the whole thing is having an intimate relationship with him the way that works best for you because he knows you better than you do. Right? That might be the reason I felt like I wanted to pray, is just so that explanation would come out, because I wouldn't have probably known to say that otherwise, right? I mean, that's really cool. Because it's things like that. It's not about what your expectations of something are, I mean, I said I think lengthy. I'm feeling lengthy, and then all of a sudden I had cut this off at 20 minutes instead of how long it is, I mean, or it's just any end of whatever. It's like I do want to pray. It's like I want to say a prayer right now. What I want to do is really, I want to point people to Christ, and I want to let people know how real it really is, because I mean, I talk about how I'm a really smart person, I'm really intellectual, and I am, but it's not like anything that could happen or could even matter, whether it could or couldn't happen, if I wasn't. This is what I mean. That's why I said I just want to pray, because any kind of words that I could try to say here, it's like what I'm trying to do right now is express my gratitude. It's not about me trying to explain anything. And so that's why I said I want to pray, because it's like I want to say, Father, thank you. But I don't want it to just be like a casual thing. It's like I want to actually go into a real prayer. But I don't quite feel right about doing that publicly, at least right now, through this. So I won't. But like I said, maybe it was just for me to be able to explain all this and, again, give some expounding on what we're hearing come out of my mouth throughout this episode, right? Because even right there, it's as real as it is. Normally, I like to say our company name as much as I can, right? I really do, because if we're saying stuff that people are going to hear, then, it's good to say the company name a lot, because then people will remember it, and then they'll be able to talk to other people about it and be like, I was listening to this podcast, and well, luckily he said the name of it 45 times throughout one episode. That's probably an exaggeration, but who knows? Sometimes I get a little bit repetitive with that, but that's something I do intentionally for that reason, because then when people are talking about it, if they do enjoy what they hear here, hey, talk about two words that mean something different. Actually spelled slightly different as well, but that's the whole point, right? Is to give truth here. That's what I say. I mean, it's discussing the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's what I've done. So I like to say the company name a lot so that people can then share it, because they'll remember it. At least they'll have a higher potential to if they've heard it many times. And I say it quite a bit. I have, at least, up until now, man. So anyway, though, yeah, in all seriousness, it's like this whole thing's been a prayer, and that's the thing. Again, it's not about praying this way, that way, something else. Somebody's got some kind of way they tell you need to do it. Same thing about all the things that people could have their opinions on. It's just about, what does it really mean to be connected with Jesus Christ in your own personal situation? And anything that seems conditional, again, that's where this all started with, is we can potentially think that just one human being that we come in contact who really is centered with Christ, and maybe only for that evening, right? For something that was kind of like a little bit different than what their other parts of their life have looked like or normally look like in that time period, right? I mean, who knows? Because it's not about them. It's about Jesus Christ. And we all can be as connected with him as we can be in our own personal situations. And like I've said many times throughout this, it's about our willingness, because there's a lot that we have to be willing to do. Because this is something that doesn't quite get talked about actually that often. At least I don't hear it get talked about often. But our God actually does ask a lot from his disciples. But it's more about the opposite end of things, like we talk about here. He asks us to give up a lot, because he wants us to have only him, because he's who it's truly about. So, with a good shepherd, we lack no good things, right? I mean, he will fill us till our cup runneth over. He really is all we need. It's like that phrase, right? When Jesus Christ is all you have, you'll realize he is all that you need. And that couldn't be more as literal as it's worded. It's not a metaphoric thing. It's not some kind of thing that might seem a certain way. That is how it is. And this is one of those don't believe me's, because truth manifests itself to you, but it does take a really, really, really high level of willingness. And willingness just comes with faith, and faith grows as we act on it. And I've got a lot of faith in what I talk about under In the Image Clothing Company podcast. And that what is a who. And that who has a name, right? That's why I said the universe has a name. Jesus Christ is the only thing you can actually put your faith in. The only thing that will actually be there when everything else leaves. It's the only thing that it's actually about. And I worded that in ways where I said it each time, because no matter how you want to look at who and what and how Jesus Christ is, he is who he says he is. So don't believe me. I don't even feel so right about it, but I'm going to say it really quick, and then I'm going to wrap this up. It's not about our clothing at all, but again, we're doing it just to benefit people. In the Image Clothing Company will have clothing available when we do, and how it comes and when and what and who cares, because it's not about that, truly. But staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work, 100% natural materials, those are the intentions behind what we will put out. Please try to do all that you can to just get it in your size. Oversized clothing will damage the body. If you ever decide to, which you do not have to, purchase in the Image Clothing Company clothing. So, yeah, it's the 23rd of February, 2025. My name's Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Anytime that there's anything in your life that really, really fills you and benefits you, and something that is actually lasting, or at least you feel like maybe you could never get it again if you didn't have that one thing, it's not about that, those, them, however we can approach talking about where that experience and those beautiful feelings within your soul and your spirit that dwells within the vessel that is your human fleshly body. It's about Jesus Christ. That's what it really is about. And he works through the things that are willing to let him work through them. Little children, humble yourself and be like a little child. Puppies and dogs, man's best friend. These things that are labeled so loving because they are. And again, anybody and everybody and everything that's willing to be used by him and to allow him to work through them, that's where it's really coming from, is Jesus Christ. It's not about that woman tonight in my personal situation, but she's not worldly. And who's trying to compare what? It's about Jesus Christ, and she knows it. And I felt it. So, right? Shout out to Frank the Guitar. Shout out to Yamaha. No affiliation as of today's date or up until today's date, but I do love this guitar. Alright, dude. Ow! Hit my scapula on this piece of wood on the... Yeah, like I did earlier. I just don't want to cut it premature. There's no kind of like trying to make this longer than it needs to be. But this is just such a different episode. It's so chill. So I'm just sitting with it because it's kind of rare as far as, at least up until this point. Some of the other episodes, dude, and quite a lot of them are just me rambling and ripping around through words and wordplay. And my voice is loud and quiet and all these things, right? So this is cool, you know, I mean, just times and places, as I say. But I like this, bud. My nose, dude. Yeah. If you never get to a temple in the ways that you feel you need to, if you're missing out on church here and there and you feel like maybe it's the end of the world, well, it's not. It's not about those things. It's not about looking at it in a certain way. It's about, what are we looking at? Not the ways we can view it. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, it's like locations on the globe, too, or experiences that we have. If we never get to go back to that place again that we felt so good at, or we never get to have that experience that filled us with what we're trying to feel again, well, it's just, why did those places or experiences make us feel that way? What did it bring up in us, and how were we acting because we were allowed to experience those things? It's Christ working through those things in all the ways that he does. His ways are not our ways. They're higher and they're holier. Yeah, man. I mean, one person feels so amazing at the beach, and the other person feels so amazing in the coldest weather on Earth, right? I mean, exactly opposing if we could actually say there is exact opposites of weather or climate. It's not about the actual experience externally. It's again about what's allowed to happen through us. Are we willing to let our God manifest himself using us as the vessel that he chooses to do that through? Because we might think it's about these things, those things, and something else. But we change and he doesn't. So that person that you always thought was so righteous, and you thought it was about them, you come to the family parties and hope they're there. Now all of a sudden they're caught up in something that they never wanted to be, and you got a negative view on, and they're not, in those times and cases, willing to let our God work through them because they've put importance on something else for a time or a season that they didn't do in the past. And you thought it was about them in the times when they were being willing, and now maybe they're not so much. It's things like that. That's kind of what this needed as far as a wrap-up, full circle kind of explanation. Because this, I'm not trying to say something, right? Again, knock on adamantium, but just, again, making it silly, that not no kind of superstition thing. It's just this girl could potentially get caught up in some things she never would have done if she hadn't have had X, Y, and who knows come up. And then now all of a sudden, maybe next time I saw her, let's say, she wasn't giving me this feeling of love and light that I'm talking about, because it wasn't about her. Do you see what I mean? That's what this needed as a wrap-up. I'm grateful for that, so I'm going to cut it right there. Thank you. 23rd of February, 2025.